Okay, here we are, episode 3. We've been working, actually just coming back from our break for the holidays. Happy New Year's.
Florida.
Merry Christmas.
Florida, that's where I was, yeah. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
What do you do if people start saying Happy Holidays in your church and you're a young pastor? Like, this is a curveball.
That'll be for the next show.
It would take a little bit more than that to ruffle my feathers, all right? But hey, if there's more than one holiday happening in the season, then you can say Happy Holidays, right? It's not like there's just one.
So believers out there, it's okay to say Happy Holidays.
It's quite
You
fine
have
to
Seems
me.
like there's a
you have to say them
campaign and
all.
war against
Hanukkah,
it.
you know, all of that. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
Muhib, how was your nap? You just woke up, right?
I just woke up.
You're late. You were late to the
I was
studio.
late for meetings. I don't text. I don't send emails.
Yeah.
Like living a.
I'm so happy for your participation.
But thank you for the love, guys, and this is exciting. You know.
It's Monday night around 8 p.m. We're going to shoot for that start time on a weekly basis. We're going to put in a live component pretty soon here. We want to get the conversation out there and have some dialogue with us and our audience, right? We're going to work on that. We're thinking out loud with you. We're at the table. This is Table Talk.
Is that our name, by the way?
We're still working
We're
on
working
it.
on
Right?
it.
Not
Okay.
settled.
That's a good one.
Just to show you how disconnected I am from.
No, we don't.
From the-
No, we are still an unnamed show, but no problem there, no pressure.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the core tonight, like what establishes us as people, and how that motivates us, helps us to function in this world, how we can be tested by an abrupt change in circumstances. And that's something that our group all thought was important. In the last week, we've kind of got the ball rolling on that theme. Maybe I got Seb with me here. Seb was with us on episode 2. Muhib, you're from episode 1, right?
They like me so much they brought me back.
Right.
Yay.
Man.
So we're getting to know each other. And Seb, what do you think? Can you kick us off with the thought?
Yeah, so basically, like, the whole idea of core to me is I was thinking about it a few days ago, talking to my boss, and I was like thinking about what exactly, if there was like one thing I could teach my daughter and I would want her to take with her when she grows up and moves out of my house, what would it be? Basically, that's the core.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing someone could ever learn, that would basically make a path for their lives. Wherever it takes them, they could always have a compass of which way they're going. And so if you look at the definition of the word core, it speaks of the central or most important part of something. It also speaks about the central part of various fruit that contains the seed. And that's a cool image. I like that a lot. We can talk about that a little bit later. But basically, when everything in your life like falls apart, when everything that you've built your life on is gone, you could maybe refer to Job in the Bible. You know, he was a man that had everything going for him. You know, 10 children, a wonderful wife, so it seemed. He had like cattle, he had land, he had everything. He had a good reputation.
Yeah.
You know, he had everything going for him. And when all that was taken away, when God let the devil take all of that away, who was Job? And I think he had a crisis. You know, he had a crisis going. And what was revealed was what was at the core of Job. So
Well, that's a perfect biblical example there.
Yeah. Let me just ask this question, because is the core something objective or could be subjective? Like, I'm going to play like, I was the devil advocate here. It's like, I have a core, you know, the core for me, what's in my heart from God. I know that sounds really spiritual, you know, but there's some people that are still searching. We're trying to help them, you know, like even in the church, you know, like, is it objective? Is it subjective? Can it be subjective?
I think it's I think we're really talking about something spiritual here.
Okay.
It's definitely not what fills my belly, in my stomach. It's not like what I had for lunch. That's my core. No, and it's not what I'm being fed through the entertainment system. Although that there's a message there, but that's not what I base my life upon. Right? We're trying to figure out what is it that's beyond all the circumstances, because the circumstances are. They come and go. They could be there. They could be destroyed. They're subject to this world.
Yeah.
And tragedy. They're subject to the.
Yeah,
potential.
I think it's both. I think in some ways we all have things that we hold dear that are subjective, and I think we're all, living our lives, finding out. All right, this was something I built my life on. That was not.
Yeah.
That was not real. That was not a foundation for my life. And there are other things that we're finding out. Wow, I've learned this, and I want to continue to build my life on this.
Well, Job, I really love that illustration. At the end of the book says, "I had heard of you, but now I see you," and I think that we can't avoid it in this conversation that the world is looking for something to put in the core.
Right.
I had a conversation with a self-proclaimed atheist. He was just very upfront about it, and it was on a college campus years ago. And it was like a 3-hour conversation, and that was like a very interesting night because we just hit it off, but coming from totally different perspectives on life. And he said of all the things that I had said in the course of that conversation, what resonated with him most was that there's a hole in our hearts that can't be filled.
Yes.
That's made for that the heart is made for God, and he said, I have to confess that I have a hole in my heart that cannot be filled.
That's
and
amazing.
It was like I'll never forget that conversation because he had to be honest.
So people are fighting the idea there is a hole or there's like an emptiness,
There's an emptiness to life,
in life,
right? And they try to fill it with very circumstantial sorts of things that could be taken away. And, yeah.
And I think it's not always things like, that we could look at and say like that is definitely not a good building material. Maybe it's not. People that say I want wealth, or people that say I want a girlfriend, or whatever things that can fill your life. Maybe it's not things that we look at and say we know for sure. Maybe it's things like I want to spend my life giving money to the poor. Maybe it's something like I'm going to be really good at playing football, and I'm going to build my life on that. That's going to determine who I am.
Well, there's a very selfless thing about the first example you gave, like giving to the poor. And you think about businessmen that have really had success and they've got so much money they don't know what to do with it. There's a lot of those out there, actually, more than just the ones that make the news and then in the evening channels. But they you wonder, wow, they're such giving, generous people.
Yes.
But they started out with most likely with a drive for success, and to make something out of themselves, and they've reached that, and now it's like all they have left is to give, and it becomes like a new mode of operation.
Yeah, and is it
for them.
possible that they do that for a while and to find out they're still not satisfied?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I'm not. And I'm not against them being
absolutely. I think it's
successful.
I think it's a great thing.
But I
think we could all agree.
I am curious, were they so generous of people up front, or were they
at the beginning,
or were they ambitious, cutthroat businessmen, looking to get to the top? And once they got to the top, they're all of a sudden they're philanthropists and care about the world and want to save the planet.
I think there's a part of giving that feels good. I think we all could agree to that.
Yeah.
I think we could all say like, if I can do something good, I feel good also.
Yeah.
I just don't think
it's not just people that benefit from it are not the only people receiving it. I think the people giving it also feel great about themselves, and maybe that could be the motivation for some people. I'm not saying that everybody that gives to the poor is doing it, for what they will get out of it. I'm sure some people just do it from a place of wanting to bless other people. But I'm saying if that's what I'm chasing in my life, if that's at the core of my life, if being benevolent is at the core of my life, I'm going to come to a point where, you know, I'm going to realize, well, that's still not enough. I still don't feel good enough about myself. I still don't feel like a fulfilled person.
Yeah. Now, when I read the gospel, the four gospels, I see the core of Christ, what he's building his life upon, like in his humanity. I see one phrase like all over the place in the gospel. I came to do the will of my Father, to do the one who sent me. Like that's his core. Like this is like my mission statement. You know, like this is something I live. I'm here to lead by example. You know, I came to do, and it takes a whole a whole episode to speak about what is that means. But
what's the mission that Christ?
Yeah, what is his mission and why he came and all that. But it's like, it's very simple, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and he's not like, what I love about Jesus, he's not saying, this has to be your mission. You know, I'm giving it to you like, this is like something you receive when you receive me. It's already done for you. You know, it's like, this, it makes me like rest. Like Andy and I were speaking about Genesis from the beginning of the Bible. You know, like, I don't know if you want to
say something.
Yeah.
About that. Yeah. Well, I mean, just to tie up what Seb and I were kind of going on with that about, is like, you know, we're not, there's something empty within us that we're born with, and we're looking to satisfy it.
Okay.
And, you know, whether that's a child, a young adult, a person in the middle of their lives, or an older person. And I just don't see people figuring that out so well, so easily.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have found things that kind of allow them to get through life.
Yes.
Yeah.
That, like, anyone could stay busy for 80 years.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not really what they were made for. And that's kind of what drives us to even
and I think the tricky part too, and the tricky part too, is that not everyone is so honest too, and to come out and say, these are all the things I've done, and I'm not satisfied. Like, who wants to come out when they're 70 years old and say, I mean, I know some people do it, but a lot of people will try to have an image like, I did it and I'm successful.
Yeah.
You don't want to admit that when you're 70 years old and say, this is what I've done in my life, and it didn't hit the mark.
So, okay, this is a good point here. Like, we can say, here's the ideal human being with the right core. Can we say that's how he or she looks like? Like, this is, like, can we give them, like, this is like a good core to adapt? I love the word adapting in life. Like, but here's also the people who lived for 80, 70 years, like, they lived like a coreless life. They actually they based their lives upon some ideas, but they're not fulfilled.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think we're born with self-interest at heart.
Okay.
And that's a product of sin. Like, that's like we're looking out for ourselves, and that's all we're looking out for. And we build our lives around that. Like, I've got to make something of myself. And God is kind of just on the sidelines. And we're religious because we want God to give us the life that we're looking to get. That might motivate a lot of people in religion. Sure. And that's not it. And that's not what we're talking about.
That's right.
I think the ideal person that you were like saying, who is that? What does that look like? Well, it's Christ,
Yeah.
And you said, like, he was satisfied in the mission that he was called to, and it was like a life of obedience thing.
Yeah.
And but I don't think that the people are looking for that. Their first go to isn't God. It's like, what can I do to make something out of myself?
Right. And I think absolutely he was happy to do the will of God. I think he was happy to be one with God even before that.
Yeah.
Before the mission came, I think the Trinity was very happy to be the Trinity.
Yeah.
before they even decided to
Like
create.
God within himself.
God within himself was content and
content.
satisfied.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something we need to learn is having this sense of true acceptance by God, not because we've done anything, not because we are something or we seem to have a status in life, but just because he paid for me to be set free. I
Yeah.
have value in his eyes. And that could be at the core of my life. And how important is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to Job. Like, remember how Job starts out? There's a conversation between the devil and God. Like you know, he only follows you
Right.
because you've given him this amazing life,
Right.
and it's kind of like, why do we serve God? Is it because of what we're going to get from him? And so, the devil did something to Job that it might be good to happen to us too. Like and I think it does happen to all of us in one measure or another.
Right.
Not to any near extent as Job.
Right, maybe not.
But like we need to be tested.
Mhm.
Like Job, for Job it was a test that God. It was actually a test that God allowed
Mhm.
to happen, and it was like, okay, who is Job and what's motivating him in his life, and does he understand his relationship to me? God could ask that question, and I think God was very happy with what he saw in Job.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story, and it speaks to humanity. One pastor said, "Hey, congratulations, you're a Christian. Go read Job. You're gonna need it. You're gonna need to think about suffering in life, and
Yeah.
it's not what you think to be a Christian.
Suffer well, you know.
Suffer well."
It's funny,
Yeah.
like people. How do I say this? Like Job, I love what you said. When everything falls apart, you know, what stands? You know, like that's a really good question to raise. Like, what's in my core? Like, what
Yeah.
helps me?
Society is like giving us things like education, work, and some idea of family. It's not a very good concept.
Therapy.
Yeah, like things to like kind of keep man together. Like it's almost like you're holding it together, but if the structure holding it up was gone, it would just fall apart.
Mhm.
That's kind of like how I see a person. It's like if it's only because there's certain things in that person's life that's keeping that person together,
Uh-huh.
right? Like what would we do if what does it do to a man to be out of work, you know, or to think that he's not getting any sense of fulfillment in his life? What does that do to a man? It's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it leads to it kind of takes that man out of the game.
Yeah, a super maybe a really practical example is, you you and I are married. Muhib, hopefully, I think he
We're
wants
working
to be whatever.
Working on that.
God willing. But it's easy to love your wife when she respects you.
Yeah.
Okay, if your wife has respect for you, you won't have a hard time wanting to love her, wanting to help her out, wanting to clean the house, wanting to buy the roses. When the respect is gone and you're being challenged now in your authority, maybe, when things are shaken, that's when your true identity comes out.
Right. Do I really love this person?
That's when the core is revealed.
Right.
Yeah. I can give example also. Martin Luther King, civil rights leader, Like this guy, amazing core from early life in his youth. He's having these big thoughts. Like his thoughts towards humanity is not black and white. But he just lived in a time where there's segregations. He will get in a bus. He sits in the back because of the simple fact he was a black man. The white people sits in the front. But he goes to get in the bus, he has to get in the front seat to go back to the back seat. And he says, like, every time he will get in the bus, his mind is in the front seat, but his body in the back.
Mm.
And he said, one day my body shall unite it with my mind.
Wow.
But there's no hatred towards a white or any human being. It's just like there's something in his core, something in his heart towards his fellow man. And I think because of his spiritual upbringing, it's like setting an example. We gave earlier, I think before the show, we spoke about Paul the Apostle. all people in Asia left me. No respect. They forgot about my mission, my ministry, my teaching. Sleepless night. I suffered for these people, but they all left me.
Mm-hmm.
What is keeping these people intact? Like,
Yes.
you know, like, it's like, I love to celebrate that. Like, when, speaking of Job, people like in culture today, when they speak about Job, they speak more about his suffering, but they forget about how he glorified God. Because
Yes.
you said it earlier, Andy, nobody's looking for God. You know, and I think
Yeah,
we
that's
have,
that's the problem.
yeah,
Yeah, like it's huge for us as Christians. We see it. It's very blatant that the world is not looking for God,
Mm-hmm.
and that like that's without God, it's a lost cause. Like you can look all you want in other things for life. You know, like Solomon is another case study for this.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like Solomon had it all too, and he realized, wow, what vanity there is in life. Without, I was made to worship, and I was made to worship God, and so since I was
right.
made to worship, then what else am I going to worship? I'm gonna worship myself. It's gonna lead to a very self-destructive idolatry.
And you said earlier you were made to create. I don't. I
Yeah.
love. I was very provoked with the things you shared before recording.
Yeah.
So I don't.
It goes to the creation mandate found in Genesis. Genesis 1, we're made in the image of God, and be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth, fill the earth and subdue it, right?
Okay.
We've got this huge playground, the universe. It's like there's no like, oh, don't go beyond this point. God says, explore, enjoy, cultivate, master it. Be a good ruler, not a tyrant, of course, but to
Yeah.
rule and rule well. And we've got the incredible faculty of our minds and the ingenuity of our hands, you know. And it's incredible what man can do. And what's the tragedy of life is that people are wasting their lives because they don't understand life. And God says, I made you for this reason, but we say, you know, I'm not looking for your answer. I'm looking to make my own way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a simple man. I hear what you say. I say in my heart, God is not boring. It's not a boring life. You know.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, this is like something people can build their lives upon. This is something good for marriages.
Yes.
You said it, Seb. You're a married man. You also, Andy. Like, you understand, like, when life gets rough in the marriage. You know, like, but also for the young people, like, oh, this idea God made me to create, it can capture someone's mind, and I love it.
Yeah, like,
You know?
why would I, like, I'm a middle school teacher, like, why would I have to tell them, you have to care about your education. Well, why should I care about my education? It's not just so that, you know, you make good money, which in turn will give good taxes to the government and,
Yeah.
you know, to keep the system going. Some parts of the world, that's how they communicate. For Russia or for, you know, there's like other parts of the world that they really talk like this. I'm a cog in the wheel that serves the machine. And that's not at all our approach. We're saying that you are made in God's image, and you are a creator, and you have power and authority that I can give you, and here's your playground, here's your world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And a thought that came to me today when I was thinking about this subject is, like, in a way, we all long to be gods. We all long to be these extremely awesome people that use their ability, God-given abilities, to be awesome. We want to
Yeah.
be superheroes. We
Yeah.
all want to have a huge impact on the world. We want to leave a trace behind of who we were, what we've accomplished. The problem is that if you fuel that person with the wrong stuff, if you have the wrong stuff at the core of that person created an image of God,
Yeah.
we can be extremely destructive and devilish also.
Right.
We can be awesome in the proper context with the proper stuff at the core. We can also be completely We can be atomic bombs waiting to explode.
Right, because the same hand that could wield a tool could wield a weapon.
Correct.
And yeah, so that's also something, it's a phenomenon because there's something in us that desires good
Right.
and the good of others and the betterment of our world. And yet there's a self-destructive nature that's equally as present within us.
Correct.
And if it's me versus you, it's got to be me. And
Yes.
so there's this dual nature almost that we wrestle with, believer in God and not non-believer alike.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's like a wrong practice kind of arise in the church because a group or a tradition, like people, they come up with their own ideas because it's like, oh, this really sounds great. And it could be very sinful. Like in Acts chapter 8, Simeon, he sees the apostle laying hands. People like they're ushering the Holy Spirit upon people, like because they are the apostle, they have the authorities, right? But Simeon is like saying in his heart, I want to do the same, and he had the wrong motivation. It's like it can be damaging also, like within the church, like in the church.
Okay, so let's talk about the church context. Yeah, that's good.
It's like in the church. So we want to have the right core, but also I think I always say that I want to be open for this idea can be wrong. I need to be humble to get corrected so I can get the right idea. Therefore, the right core can be in my heart.
Yes.
Yeah, Christ is formed in us.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that forming speaks of process.
Right.
Yes.
And definitely the Christian way is a way of is a process. You just see it in the disciples' lives too. Those that walked with Jesus, they really didn't get it, and that's okay. It wasn't about them getting it. Almost, they would get it, and Christ wanted them to get it, of course. But it was not about them getting it right away. Like Jesus didn't stop saying, "No, you don't understand." He actually kind of just preached. He said what he said, and then he moved on.
Yeah.
And he's like action and speech, action, speech, Jesus, and just follow me and you're going to figure this out. And it was like, even all the way to the cross and the resurrection, they were equally puzzled and bewildered.
Listen to this. But they did not understand these sayings, and it was hidden from them. So they did not receive it, and they were afraid to ask him about his sayings. This is the apostle. Just like verse on the spot,
Perfect.
the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
speaking to us,
Yeah.
like that fear.
Yeah.
Like you teach young people, you have your young family. I meet people,
Yeah.
but we have that fear sometimes. Like I'm talking about the church, in the church, in like contents,
Uh-huh.
like we can have that fear sometimes of like asking questions, knowing
Oh, sure.
like,
yeah,
do I have the
definitely.
right core, the right motivation, like things like that.
It's easy to say amen.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
next sermon.
And we don't want
next-
people just to say amen. We just want
Right.
them to say, hey.
But that's exactly what the core isn't. The core isn't what you think you know. It is what you've actually learned.
yeah.
And it comes out exactly in those times when, all right, no, it's just you. It's you and God. And you were saying maybe everybody's left you or everything's gone, you've lost your job or whatever happened. So that at that point, you know what you actually have learned, not what you think you know or what you've heard, what you all agree on in the church, if we're talking about the church,
Yeah.
Now or maybe you're on the mission field by yourself.
Yeah.
That could apply to some people. Okay, now what do I really believe?
Yeah.
What's really at the core of this? And,
Now, let's give the good example. We have the people who are afraid, and we have people like you guys.
People are afraid to expose themselves.
Yes. But
To get help, maybe.
yes.
Say, like, my life's not making sense. There's a disconnect between what I think I believe and what's going on the inside of me and what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect.
Yeah, because before we recorded, we were speaking about your personal testimony and how, like, I'm very fascinated by, because I know Andy personally, the audience, maybe they don't know the connections between us yet, but like, I love because there's like an amazing things happening in the heart in that family, your family, your mom, your dad. So they saw the value of sending you to Christian education.
Yeah.
You know, like your mom can foresee
Right.
my son, he can, like, I can foresee him doing something in the kingdom of God, or like, it could be like a spiritual, it's like
Like
something.
the best thing, well, the way that they would have thought of it is like the best thing I could give my kids
Okay.
is Christ.
Yeah.
And our family is Christ. And we moved from Florida to Baltimore for that reason in 97. And it was about getting the family where, in a place where they could focus on God. And my dad wanted to go to Bible college. And that was a huge motivating factor. And this is what my family needs.
When did it become yours? Like, you
Well,
know?